I've been a Democrat for over 50 years. Started in Mississippi. I was a Democrat here in Georgia when all the people that thought profits were more important than people left the Democratic Party and became Republicans. Those of us that have in memory can remember this used to have a lot of people in the Democratic Party in Georgia, and all of a sudden they vanished. Makes you wonder if they really did understand what the Democratic Party was about. In Newton County, we've been putting together the activities and events associated with the Democrats. And it's been a lot like being the good son who's been working in the fields forever, and yet the young son comes along and gets all the benefits. Or it's sort of been like John the Baptist, and I was wondering if my head's still on. But the point is that we are right now extremely fortunate and extremely enthused over the people who have volunteered to become the next president and vice president of the United States. It's up to you and me to convey that information to our neighbors. I have a good friend who's been a Republican forever, and I had a come to Jesus talk with him about a month ago, so you know what the time frame is. This is before the Harris Falls ticket. And I said, you know, I can't ask you to vote for Joe Biden, but I can ask you not to vote for the crazy man. What I'm really saying is remember us in between times. We have meetings every month. We have activities that we go through and do every month, and we need your support. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. We have one additional speaker. Raphael Oregon will be representing My Family in Action, and we're grateful to have diversity in action here at Springfield Baptist Church. I believe you're all so white. Welcome to Springfield.
Thank you all. Good day, Springfield. My name is Rafael Aragon. Rafael is fine if you can't roll your R's. I'm an organizer with Mi Familia en Acción. That translates to My Family in Action. We're a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We work to increase civic engagement and participation within the Latino community. If you want to learn more about our organization and what we do, we have a table out there. Please come by and chat with us. I love to talk. That's why I'm up here. But I'm very pleased to be here in this space today with you all. I want to thank all of you for making a space for us to join you all in this kind of ceremony, celebration, event, whatever you want to call it. I think it's important that our communities come together. As we all know, we're stronger when we act as one. And so we want to join you all in your efforts to help make this country everything that it has promised to be. Events like this always bring me back to going to church as a kid, and how much I liked going to all of the special celebrations and ceremonies, seeing all new faces and some old faces, people you don't see except Easter Sunday and Christmas. You know, times when everyone returns to the flock, and it's just such a good environment. Good people, motivated to do good things, coming together, and being in community with one another. I think more than anything, I remember the Father's Day services, at my church at least. The mothers would take care of the Father's Day services, and the fathers would take care of the Mother's Day services. I don't know if you guys do it like that here, but the Father's Day services were always phenomenal. Like, we had the best food, the best decorations, the most thoughtful gifts, and the Mother's Day services were not that great. I mean, we had the most expensive gifts maybe for Mother's Day, but that was pretty much it. And I think a lot of times what our men would say is, we men are called to protect and to serve. We're not, you know, they looked at cooking and cleaning and making a space beautiful as women's work. And I think that is why in 2020, Latinas led Latino men by 10 percentage points in terms of showing up at the polls and actually voting. Because men, we can be a little narrow-minded. We have a definition of what it means to provide and to protect. And if something doesn't fit within our capacity to understand what those two words mean, then we don't engage in it. But I think it's important for all of us to understand that voting is providing. Voting is providing the future that you want for your kids. Just as voting is protecting. Voting is protecting all of the hard work that we have put into building the democracy that we have today. And we are at a time where we are risking losing all of that hard work, where we are risking taking decades of steps backwards. And we don't want that. You don't want that. Nobody in any of our communities want that. So in an election, So right now, there are mass voter challenges being submitted in an attempt to disenfranchise our community members and remove us from the rolls. And when I say us, I mean you and us, not just Latinos, everyone, right? There is a concerted effort to disenfranchise the people who, all of the people in this country who are trying to vote. And so we need to get out into the streets and make sure that people know that this is happening. If you haven't done this yet, please check your voter page. My voter page, that's mvp.sos.ga.gov. If you have questions about that, again, we're back there. We have our booth, our table. I'm more than happy to chat with you. But we want to make sure that this election, in 2020, the election was decided by about 12,000 votes. When an election is decided by 12,000 votes, we need to make sure that no voter challenge goes unanswered. We have to make sure that all of our people have updated information, the correct address, the correct phone number on the rolls, so that if anything happens, that person can be reached and can correct any mistakes. We have more than 400,000 registered Latino voters in the state of Georgia, and we're working really hard to get that number up. We are putting in the effort. And we're putting in the effort not just to get that number up, but to make sure that the people who are already registered have up-to-date information, that they have their home address as it should be, and that they have a plan to go vote, that they know where they should be voting and when they're gonna vote, and hopefully voting early, right? We all know that's what you gotta do. But, obviously, we have to work together as one community. As people of color, as working people in this country, we have to come together and make this happen as one, so that we can protect all of the good that we have built and fought so hard for, and provide that better future that we want to for our family members. So thank you all so much for making this space for Latinos at your church and giving us this time. We are so happy to join you in this video.
Devon Mason, everybody, Commissioner in Newton County.
Well, good morning, Springfield. It is always an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure.
And young people that we're going to hear from in the next hour or so, and in preparation for them coming, my first question to this panel is, what do you think we get wrong in our assumptions about Generation Z and civic engagement?
I'll speak to that real quickly. I'm Vicki Mills. I'm with our Newton County NAN organization. I had the privilege of speaking to one of our LSU students. She was a scholarship recipient last year, and she's very active on her college campus. So I reached out, since this was going to be the topic, on how we miss our interaction with our Gen Z. And the very first thing she said is, you have social media all wrong. We don't use what you use. We're the TikTok, we're the Instagram. They are doing tabling events, they're on the LSU campus. And she really said that if we work more towards the appropriate social media campaigning, because that's where young people are getting their information from. So I said to Keegan, please continue to send the NAN organization in Newton County all of your pointers so we can engage our local youth in Newton County on a more effective plane.
Thank you, Ricky James. I failed to introduce you earlier. My apologies, representing the National Action Network in Newton County, and also President Archie Shepard, who's a member of this church. So thank you for taking the lead on that question. Who else wants to talk about what we get wrong? Brother Nesbitt, and then we'll go to Reverend Threets.
Well, I believe there are a few key issues. Is one that we need to directly engage with this segment of our population. It's important that we emphasize student debt, because many of them want to go to college, but they can't afford to pay the debt that comes along with that. So we need to get through to them the importance of how we can allow student debt to be reduced, and therefore they become more involved because it directly affects them. Also, job opportunities. Many of them are going into the job market. They're looking for opportunities where they can have an affordable and a living wage. So if we explain to them the importance that your vote can help put people in place that can make those opportunities available more so than others. And also affordable housing. Many of them are trying to find a place to live, and housing is very expensive at this point. So if we emphasize that your vote will impact these issues that directly affect you, that may help to get them more involved.
Very simply put, the youth of today are basically telling us that we don't respect them. What they're trying to tell us in nonverbal terms is that we're not listening to them. We don't know how to ask them questions. What they're telling us is that we are telling them what to do. All we do is we lecture, we tell, we show through our actions, but that doesn't translate to them. We have to find a better way to communicate with them so that they hear us. And the best way to do that is to ask them, what's the best way to communicate with them? Each of these kids, each of these youth are different in the way that they translate. Yes, they use social media, different social media platforms. Yes, they're concerned about their futures and their current, but they're most concerned because they feel a disconnect with not just their parents, not just their aunts, their uncles, but with us as a general public. We're not hearing what they're saying. We're not listening to what they're saying, but most of all, we're not asking them what's most concerning to them. We assume based upon our experiences, based upon our past, and based upon what we see and where we see them headed. We need to find a way to actually have open communications, and actually having a panel that's coming before us today to ask us questions and interact with us is a great start, Dr. Ward.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think also to add to that, I think we have to be able to articulate the why behind it. I think a lot of times that we dictate, as you stated, Reverend Priest, we dictate to them, you should go vote. You need to vote this, you need to vote that. But they need to understand what they're voting for and why they're voting for. Our young people today, they have a slogan to say, I'm standing on business. They need to understand what standing on business means. So I think connecting the dots with them, and like you said, not speaking at them, but speaking with them, giving them the information and saying, hey, you know what, let's use social media. Let's Google this candidate. Let's see what makes this person qualified to be in this particular role and why is it best for. And then letting them understand that it's just not about the presidential election, but they need to understand why they need to vote on all levels. And as parents, as adults, we need to explain explain that to them. When I was younger, I remember my mother used to take me to the polls with her. I think some of that gap we've lost it somewhere. So I think we need to get back to basics and be like the young people, and as adults, stand on business.
We failed putting voting in the context of history. If you're a aficionado of history, young kids today don't understand that we weren't voting. It was just 58 years ago. And they don't understand that that happened. When I talk to my children, I say, you know, in 1960 anything, it's almost like Wild Wild West. Like, wow. You know, it was only 58, 60 years ago when you had colored bathrooms. It was only 58 years ago when everything was segregated. You couldn't go to school. I think our kids, especially in Rockdale and Newton County, because the majority of the schools are African American, they think that that's the norm of what the world is. It's not. That's a facade. And so when you put things in context of where we come in and how short of a time it was when we couldn't do these things, I think they will get more urgency and understanding that we have to effectuate and what they can effectuate change in a rapid way.
You make a good point. As you grow up, when I was 19 or 20, being 80 was unreasonable. I had no idea what being 70 years old was like. My great aunt who was 80 said, JJ, I know what being 18 is like, but you don't know what being 80 is like. Well, you hit it on the head. Young people grow up trying to understand what it is all about, and they look around and their schools full of African Americans, so gee, this is the way it's always been. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I remember in Mississippi the schools were segregated in December 31st, 1969 by a judge saying, next Monday you're going to be integrated. And next Tuesday about half of the white faculty fled. We remember that. So they don't. This is the way it's always been. But we have to help them understand that that's not the way it's always been, and unless you pay attention and participate, it might vanish.
To that very point, the governor of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp, recently signed 3 new voting laws on the last day of the General Assembly of 2024. Senate Bill 189, which makes it easier to invalidate a voter's eligibility by not placing any limits on which factors can be used to make a valid claim. I believe Raphael was mentioning that while he was speaking. House Bill 974 it's supposed to be a transparency in the election process where ballots will be made available by public access on the internet. House Bill 1207 requires all election workers to be U.S. citizens and eliminates the number of election machines per voter with 1 machine per every 250 voters. So what's new at the polls in 2024, and what are your organizations doing to help us to know what's going to be different this November 5th? Yes, please.
So the Newton County NAACP, we have made a concerted effort at every event we're invited to and every event that we host to make sure that we have devices available where you can check your status, your voter status. And individually, we're not relying on you to do that. We actually have folks standing there at the units. Even most recently at the back to school event with the Newton County Sheriff's Office, we had some of our strategic people in a couple different locations allowing people to come up and showing them actually how to check your voter status to make sure you were still in good status. Those who had been dropped out is the flip side. We are actually allowing and helping you make sure that you're getting registered properly and on time to make sure that everything comes back so that when the votes come up, you are ready to vote and know exactly where your precinct is going to be.
The organization also has the sacred duty to help our community by voter awareness. We're working with Reverend Harold Cobb and his Newton County Voter Education Project. I also worked for the Newton County Board of Elections as a poll precinct manager, and we have been seeing these voter suppression actions by the legislature under the Gold Dome coming down the pipeline. As we all know, in Newton County, we only have one drop box for absentee ballot. It has to be done within the framework of the office hours at the Board of Elections. They will be, I'm certain, removing machines in order to impact the wait. So we are encouraging everyone to not only make sure you are your status is, your voting privilege is in good standing. Also, at your My Voter page, we're suggesting if you're looking that up with your smartphone, you actually take a screenshot of your page stating that you are registered and in good standing. So if anyone challenges you, then you have that statement of fact that says on this date, my voter status was appropriately valid for this action of voting. And we are asking everybody to come out and vote early. We'll have 3 locations in Newton County. We have Turner Lake, we'll have the Church of the Nazarene, of course, Prospect, and early voting starts on the 15th of October, so we hope everyone comes early so that what the legislature has done under the Gold Dome doesn't turn away voters because they're going to be standing in a long line. We're hoping that you pack a lunch, a bottled water, and your patience. So as NAN works with other organizations in the county, the DIMS, like I said, Reverend Harold Cobb's Newton County Voter Education Project will be doing voter education and registration drives. And we are also, as Ms. Deese said, we are encouraging everybody to remember to vote blue all the way through, because it is the local level that we make the impact.
Vicki, could you just, and we'll go right next to you, the transparency bill, I believe is House Bill 1207, where they want to be able to put a ballot on a public website. And the fear is that your employer can come and see who you voted for, that your family, your colleagues, that whoever wants to scrutinize your political activity can see who you actually voted for. It's a fear-mongering tactic.
It is.
But they are suggesting that they will not be able to see who voted for who.
Board of Elections just notified all of our working staff that we will start with our updated training mid-September because of all of the changes that have taken place. So we are going to be briefed on how, from a precinct standing, we as a poll manager or just a floor monitor will deal with these kinds of issues moving forward. Also, the issue with a Board of Elections person deciding not to certify the ballot count is going to make a difference. It's going to throw us into litigation. So we have a lot of hard work, boots on the ground, not just to get Kamala as our Madam President and elected, but to get to work, to keep our democracy and our voting safe, and that we don't see a replay of voting suppression as was experienced during the fights of the civil rights years. We have to move forward. We're not going back, as Kamala says, we're not going back.
I began working computers in 1961. Yes, there were computers in 1961. I have been a poll watcher now for several sessions. The people that participate in actually making the elections possible are extremely scrupulous. They cross every T, they dot every I. There's nothing that goes on untoward in a polling place. It is my understanding that if you're challenging people, they're both the right to vote, that has to happen at the Board of Elections office. It doesn't happen for what I understand, it doesn't necessarily happen at the polling place. Am I wrong in that?
There is, from what I have read and understood, someone could come into a precinct and challenge a voter. So I think that's kind of the gray area of what we're getting in these new legislative passages down under the Gold Dome, is that they're moving towards ways in which they can challenge you if they see you coming in the door and they're there. They can say, he shouldn't be allowed to vote. And they really don't have to have the documentation for why that person can't vote, but they do have to do it down at the Board of Elections offices where they have to prove their point. Yeah.
The other thing is that let's think for a moment about the process of voting here in Georgia. You go in and you show who you are, typically with a verified ID, such as your driver's license. If it's got a little star on it, it means that you've proven that you actually are an American citizen and that you are living here in Newton County or wherever. You're given a card that goes and you put it into the voting machine. You vote, the printer prints out a paper. You take the paper. The people in the Board of Elections do not touch that paper. They're forbidden for touching that paper until you go and put it through the scanner yourself. So they don't know who you voted for. That particular ballot has a number on it that says, this is ballot number 457. It doesn't say this is ballot number 457 that was produced by J.J. Hayden. So this idea of, we're going to let you look at all your, no, that's a scare tactic, just as you said. This is going back to 1876. So that's where the debate happened. The question comes is, how do we protect our vote? We don't vote with only 11,780 votes more than what the Orange Man got. This time it needs to be 1100,000. It's impossible for me as a commissioner, how can I put it? A Board of Elections officer who wants to be cause problems. It's impossible for me to look at those 1100,000 votes. Not when I have to certify it by Monday, which is the Georgia law. The following Monday after an election, the vote is certified, and if you don't certify it as a Board of Elections officer, you're breaking the law. Okay. So my one last point is that this is the first time we've had an election of two people of color. One of them is orange.
Two more questions for each participant. The first question is, on election day in America, an 18-year-old boy, an 18-year-old woman or a man, person of color, white person, Hispanic, has as much power in those minutes as Elon Musk or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. They have as much power as anyone else in America in those moments that we're in the ballot box. It took a long, arduous, violent journey to get to this point. Tell us your most memorable voting testimony. We're collecting voting testimonies here at Springfield, hopefully to inspire younger generations to take seriously their ability to vote. Can you tell us your most memorable vote?
my most memorable came just this past election in 2020. So I'm from Virginia originally. And Virginia is a pseudo swing state. So, you know, when I voted in Virginia, I had hope that maybe my vote was going to have meaning in determining particular elections. Go red, go blue. I moved to Georgia in 1999, and for a long time, I made my vote, it went red all the time, no matter how hard I voted, how ardently I voted. And I started getting frustrated and say, man, in Georgia, you know, if I'm voting, my vote just gets eaten up with this red monster every single year. And it started becoming frustrated, but I kept voting. It's 2020 when I voted, and I saw how close we were, and and it was going blue. And I had people from other states calling me, come on, y'all, come on, Georgia, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And I said, come on, and it went blue. I was like, oh, it's on now. It is on. We are possibly now a swing state. And that's what I want young people to understand, that the Electoral College is really a crutch for the Republican Party. It's the only thing keeping Meghan alive. From 2000 to 2024, only one time has the Republicans won a popular vote. That was George Bush in his second election. And he only won by 0.1%. The popular vote, the nation wants blue. The nation wants our policies. The nation wants women's rights. The nation wants affirmative action. The nation wants it. But this curve called the Electoral College is allowing these megas to stay in the game. But guess what? Georgia now can kill all of that. We can now play the Electoral College game and use it against them. We don't need a blue wall. Now we have a red southern wall down here that we're going to call the Georgia Blue Nation. And now we can change all elections and make it almost impossible for even the Electoral College now to set mega. So my thing is that let's take this Electoral College opportunity to make Georgia a permanent blue state and change the nation permanently the next 10 years.
And mine may not be as really, mine was more so personal because I just recently had surgery. But I had to demonstrate to my son, who is now 26, that is in the audience, that nothing was going to impede me from voting into that election. And I said this to the church some weeks, by maybe last month, but I have to say this again, that excuses are tools of the incompetence, which build monuments of nothingness and bridges that lead to nowhere. And those who specialize in excuses seldom excel in anything else. So I could not make having a partial knee replacement an excuse of a justification as why I was not going to get up and let my vote be counted. I had to demonstrate to my son, I had to demonstrate to my community, I had to demonstrate to everyone that if I can get out and vote, there's nothing that you can tell me or a reason why you can't do the same.
I want you all to participate with me in a thought experiment. We've seen Kornacki and his big board, right? I want you to imagine right now him looking at a board of the United States and it is blue. From one pole to the other, it is blue. Every morning when you wake up, think about that. We're going to have a blue tsunami. That's the only way to make this work is to overwhelm them, but it means we've got to participate. You and I and our kids' friends. I walked up to my next door neighbor's son and he was had one of his friends with him, and I said, "Do you realize how important it is to vote this time?" This was back in the beginning of July. This was before the wonderful things that have happened. I said, "You must vote. You don't understand the consequences. You must vote, and you must get your friends to vote."
I wanted to reiterate what you did We did invite the Republican Party and the Trump campaign. I just want to reiterate that one more time for those who are watching this program, and we did not get an answer in response to our invitation. Vicki, tell us your voting testimony.
And I'm not going to share one of my own because I've been fortunate to never have a problem going in to vote. But I will share a brief story of one of my first days as a precinct manager at Turner Lake, better known as Town, on election day. It was late on election day, probably 30 minutes before the polls were to close. And an elderly man came in, 96 years of age, and he gave us his testimony for voting. He said, I know I'm here very late, and he said, I'm sorry. But he said, I fought too hard not to vote. And it brings me to tears every time I tell the story, because he is why we do what we do and continue to fight, so there are no stories that our children's children tell about fighting to be able to vote.
As a nonpartisan organization, we fight for the rights of everyone. Black, white, red, green, brown, purple, tall, short, fat, skinny. I'm sorely disappointed, as Reverend Dr. Lee has said, that parties were invited here to represent themselves, and they don't see, let's go biblical. They find it robbery to be in your presence. They find it robbery to be in your presence, okay? So to talk about my experience, I'm a product of Northern New Jersey. I was born during the time that there were race riots. When my parents brought me home for the first time on January 7th or 8th, 1967, there were National Guardsmen on the street. They had to pull me out of a crib, put me on a floor, and wrap themselves around me to protect me from being riddled by bullets. From that point up until my grandparents talked to me about how their experiences were right here in rural Georgia, Morgan County, Georgia. And my grandfather worked the polls every year he could up until he couldn't anymore. And the reason being, our folks were not allowed to vote, whether you voted red, blue, or pink, okay? When I had my first opportunity, and this is my testimony, to vote, I made sure that not only was I registered, I dressed in a suit. I went to the polls and was sent from one place to another, even in East Orange, New Jersey, to go vote. I was told, this isn't your district, this isn't your district, this isn't your district, because I'd forgotten my card. Went back to the house, got my card, went to the original place where I knew I was supposed to vote, and they finally allowed me in. I cast my vote, walked out with my ballot, and was extremely excited, not because I got bounced around, but because I was for the first time counted. One voice, one vote, and it takes each of us, each time and every time, to cast your vote. Otherwise, you have no voice when it comes to opposition in the national arena, in the regional arena, in the state arena, and most effectively in your home arena. I don't know if you all realize, but here in Covington, Georgia, in Covington, the city of Covington, when we moved here in 2008, it was a dry city. If you all have realized, Covington now, you can get drinks on every corner, or bring your own and you're riding around the golf course, tipping. I can't do it in my car, and I'm a deputy sheriff. If I can't drink in my car, why are people able to drink on a golf cart? So your vote, each and every time can only count, and your voice can only be heard every time you go and you cast your vote. And since I was 18, and I'm 57 now, since I was 18, I have not missed an election, whether it was in New Jersey, whether it was in North Carolina, whether it was in the Washington, Baltimore, Virginia area, and most certainly here in Georgia.
Thank you for the opportunity. I do want to say that I'm here on behalf of the Rockdale County Democratic Committee, and our chairperson is Rosalind Ridgway. And we do have a table out front, and since you asked us for our personal concerns in regards to voting, I do want to say that there are members of the Rockdale Democratic Committee that are here manning the table, and I would like for them to stand if they're in the audience, because I do want to recognize them, because it's about the team and it's about our efforts. My personal thing for voting is that, I don't know, they may be outside the stand, there they are standing in the back. I want to recognize them, and this young lady here, thank you as well, is that I was born and raised in New York City, and I'm 68 years old, and I grew up during the time of the riots, where when Dr. King was killed and we went out to the streets, and we understood the importance of trying to establish our rights. But the most important thing was when Obama was running for president, and both my children, it was their first time where they were eligible to vote. And they were excited about going to the polls, but not only did they go with us to the polls, they got all their friends from school. And a group of us went and we voted early. And all of them were there, and it was their first time voting, and they were so excited and so proud. And I think that's what made me feel that we can make a difference, because our young people always tell us my vote does not count. But what I have told them and how I get them to understand is that if we collectively organize our votes, even though we are one vote, but if we all come together and collectively put our vote together, we can make a difference and we can have an impact, because your collective votes let the elected officials know that if you do not respond to our demands, you may be in office this time, but we can take you out next time. And we saw that happen with the Republican candidate who won, but on his second chance to come in, we came together as a community and we stood up and we voted in numbers. And in Georgia, we turned it from red to blue with only 11,000 plus votes.
I want to give each of you an opportunity to give us a 30-second commercial. We want to know what your organizations are doing between now and November the 5th, and how we can get involved in your organization's efforts. And we're talking about November 5th, but the beginning of early voting is 60 days away, including today, on October the 15th. So what is your organization doing, and how can the audience get involved in 30 seconds for each of us? Bob, you want to go first?
Sure. One, with Rockdale Democratic Committee, we heard the gentleman, the commissioner from Newton County, speak about the collaborative office. Well, that is the Rockdale Democratic Committees. That is our office that we're there every day, 365 days out of the year. But we opened up our office to the Harris campaign to say, we will share our office space with you. Matter of fact, we will turn it over to you and allow you to run your campaign out of our office. So we are phone banking, we are canvassing, we have signs, we are reaching out to the community to come and say, join us in this fight. It's important that we understand that we can make a difference. But the difference comes when we come together with teamwork. And that's the most important thing that I try to emphasize, is that it's not about me, or it's not about the Democratic Committee. It's about us collectively coming together and having one goal, one mind, and one purpose. And if we do that as a community, we can make a difference. If we put our differences aside and come together for a common goal, then we can make things happen. And that's our purpose at the Democratic Committee. Please come out and join us in this fight as we move forward. We have a table out front. We need your help. We need your input, and we need your voice. Thank you.
For the Newton County NAACP, you can go to Newton Branch on Facebook, Newton Branch NAACP. We're on there. You'll be able to see different events that we have scheduled, opportunities to join. You can go to your email address, type secretary@newtonnAACP.org. You can contact our secretary, Sonia Calloway Pippin. She'll be more than happy to get any information out to you about what we have done, what we are doing, and where we'll be next. We definitely need everyone's participation in this vote. Again, we are driving by checking people's registration outside. We are assisting those who are not registered or who have been removed from voter registration. We're assisting you in getting registered today. We are going to be out in the communities coming for, up until the early voting starts, and even beyond that, up until election day, to make sure that folks not only are registered, but that you have a way to get to the polls as well. And beyond that, we are also making sure that we are not only checking for registration for votes, but we're also doing health screenings wherever we are. Because we know that there are silent killers in our community that happen every day because we don't check ourselves. We're afraid to check. We've always been taught to make sure that we don't let people see us sweat, don't let people see us suffer, but we're suffering. And we're doing it not only from a voting perspective and not advocating for ourselves, but also from a healthcare perspective.
Very briefly, National Action Network will continue to partner with our county groups, Newton Dems, as well as the Voter Education Project, which again is a nonpartisan project. We will be having a candidate forum on the 19th of September at the old courthouse. I believe it's scheduled to start at 6:30, and that will offer the voters an advanced chance again to hear what the candidates running for office in Newton County are offering the voters. And of course, we are volunteering and postcard writing, and we will be doing phone banking with Demand at the Rockdale Newton Center there in Old Town. So we're just continuing to partner with everybody because this is the most important election of our lives. We thought 2020 was the most important election of our lives, but we've seen Project 2025, and we know what they intend to do. So the fight is on, we're here.
Thank you for bringing us to Project 2025.
The Newton Dems, along with the Rockdale Dems and with the Harris Committee, have established that wonderful office that the Rockdale Dems have let us use. If you haven't heard from people up here, and Demond rather, who had to leave, that there's something for you to do if you're interested, you haven't been paying attention. If you want to phone bank, if you want to send book cards, if you want to virtually phone bank, if you want to knock on doors, if you want to leave hangers, contact us. You want to get people to the polls? Contact us. We make lists. We remember you. We'll call you up and say, do that. It's up to you then to participate with us. This is the moment of call, right? We've said what we got to say now. It's up to you to come and help us get this over the line.
100 Black Men of New Rock. We will be visiting every single high school to get all 18-year-old seniors to vote. We're going to do a campaign. We're going to be in every single school between now and November to get to the campaign. In 2020, it was a record for the number of young people that voted in Georgia, yet we only won by 12,000 votes. And you got to understand, we took Georgia by surprise. They think we hit them with a fluke left hook and knocked them out. But we didn't hit them with a right cross that they see coming. That's because of the 18-year-old voters.
I'm on your side. Sheila D. Springfield Baptist Church Social Justice Ministry.
Well, Springfield Baptist Church, be prepared again to be sick of us. We're going to be outside with the pom-poms, getting them ready and rolling. So be looking out for us. We will also be sharing some information regarding voting. We want to make sure that you are, because we know that a well-informed voter is an effective voter. So we want to make sure that we're putting information out. We want to partner with our organizations, okay? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So anything that we can do to partner, because we are literally that church on the side of the road in the poem by Sam Frost. So we want to be out front and center. Anything that we can do to support, we want to encourage those individuals, those nursing homes, so we can get these individuals out to vote. So Springfield, be prepared to see the pom-poms rolling.
Let's give it up for our panel for our first session of One Talk 2024. I want to give you an opportunity to go to the tables, take a potty break, pay the water bill. Please be back at 10:35 so that we can hear the people we came to hear from. Generation Z will begin to speak. Would you please come back in 10 minutes?
I'm the daughter of two pastors, and I respect being invited into someone's sanctuary, into someone's church. And I'm also Southern. I grew up in Mississippi, came of age here in Georgia, and so I know protocol and etiquette. But I have to correct the pastor, so number one, your counting is a little off. I'm not going to cast aspersions on Tuskegee, but the #1 college in the United States of America would not be Morehouse. I'll let you spell out, as a man, what the right answer is. And secondly, I have to take exception, Pastor Lee. When you invite someone in, you encourage them to be your keynote. It is poor sportsmanship to precede it with Riley, Janai, Sydney, and Tristan. If I had any sense, I'd sit down. But I'm in politics, so here I am. Thank you so much for hosting this conversation, for inviting me for a few moments to discuss what has been so extraordinarily well laid out. Riley began by explaining the power of voting, the privilege that we have as citizens to make our voices heard. Janai lifted up the challenges that young people face, thinking about how their voices can matter, and sometimes the comparisons between the candidates is not the issue. It's the question of what do we need from the people who lead us. Sydney gave voice and eloquence to the conversation of what we have here that so many dream of, wish for, cross the border to achieve. And Tristan told us that once we've done our duty at the ballot, it's our job to hold the people who get the jobs accountable. If we had any sense, we'd be electing them this week. But in lieu thereof, you got me for a few minutes. I am honored to be here because this is a place that understands that politics isn't everything. This is a nonpartisan space. I don't have that problem. But in this space, we are often told to separate our politics from our faith. We are told that we should leave our ideology at the door, but I was raised better. You see, I was raised to understand that King David was in the Bible. That Queen Bathsheba. I know that we talked about King Solomon, that we had Pharisees. Those weren't just random people on the streets. That the Pharaoh wasn't a man without some power and political providence. You see, politics isn't everything we do. It decides whether we have a roof over our heads, food in our bellies, education in our minds, and a future for our families. And when we try to divorce ourselves from politics, we are divorcing ourselves from reality. And when we cast our lot with silence instead of casting our ballot in the booth, we are handing someone else the power to determine our lives. I grew up in a family that believes in the power of the vote. I believe it was Janai who said she was around 8 when she would go with her parents to vote. I was actually a little younger. We used to vote in Anniston Avenue Elementary. I'm the second of 6 kids, so when we would go in with my parents, we looked like make way for ducklings. And they would walk us into the school, and we would trail behind them as they divided and went into the booths, 3 of us with one, 3 with the other, because my parents wanted us to see them in the act of civic participation. They wanted to demystify what it meant to be an American by showing us one of the most profound ways they lived that citizenship. And my parents did this not only because it was their civic duty, it was because they'd fought for that when they were about the same age as these young people. You see, my father was arrested at the age of 14 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi for having the audacity to try to register black people to vote. My mother did the same work, she just managed not to get caught. But my parents, as teenagers, understood that the power of the ballot was not about the name that was on the ballot, it was about who was allowed in the booth, who was allowed to have a voice, who was allowed to have a choice, whose citizenship was made full and meaningful because of their participation in that civic process. I'd heard about my father being arrested, I'd heard about my mother's work, I'd heard about the fact that voting was sacred in my family from as early as I can remember. But it wasn't until 2018 that I understood the tensions that came along with that power to vote. You see, you may have heard in 2018 I stood for office in the state of Georgia. I ran to become the governor. I was the first black woman in American history to be nominated by a major party for that job. And while I appreciate the applause, it shouldn't have taken that long, but that said, I lifted up because in 2018, in the throes of an election that was marred by voter suppression, was marred by people being told they did not have the right to be heard, it was marred by people's names being pulled off the rolls simply because they chose not to cast a ballot, or some who did just got taken off anyway, I went home to visit my parents. My mom and dad at the time lived in Wiggins, Mississippi, or actually they moved to Hattiesburg by then, and my grandmother lived with them. And I went to see my grandmother, Stacey Abrams. And I went to the room where she sat. She was in her 90s and she didn't come out, she went to her. And so I went to pay my respects and go see my grandma. And I sat on the bed because I had to wait until Maury was done with whatever he was doing. And when she turned to me, she asked me how I was doing. And I told her I was worried. I was worried about this election. I was worried about voter suppression. I was worried about the consequences if someone who didn't believe what I believed got the power of that job. And I was worried that people didn't understand what was at stake. And she looked at me and she said, "Stacey, did I ever tell you about the first time I voted?" I said, "No, ma'am." I'd heard thousands of stories over my life. As I said, we're Southern, we tell stories all the time. This is one story my grandmother had never told me, and when she started to tell the story, I realized why. Because this wasn't a story she was proud of. You see, my grandmother and my grandfather had both grown up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My grandmother was a cook at a local college. My grandfather also did that work, and in between, he had been conscripted into World War II, conscripted into the Korean War, and each time he went abroad to fight for freedom, he came home and was denied the right to vote. My grandmother worked for 40 years at a college. Her children were not allowed to attend. And so in the late 60s, in the early 60s, when the right to vote became real, when the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, many people think that was when things changed, but for most Southerners, the first time the right to vote was real was in the following presidential election in 1968, because just because it's law doesn't mean it gets implemented. And so in 1968, my grandmother and my grandfather and my Uncle LP and my Aunt Sister were getting ready to go and vote, because back then, this was a monumental moment. This was the first time in their 40 years on this earth they were going to be allowed to enjoy the full vestiges of citizenship. My grandfather and my uncle, my great uncle and my great aunt were in the front room and they were ready to go. They were dressed up. They got dressed up to go and vote. They were ready to go across town and cast that ballot, and my grandfather called for my grandmother and he said, "Wiltshire, it's time to go." And she didn't respond. Her nickname was Bill and his nickname was Jim, and it was always very confusing to children. So my grandfather, Jim, said, "Bill, it's time to go, come on." She didn't respond, and finally, he used the term of endearment he loved for her. He said, "Sugar honey, it's time to go." And when she still didn't say anything, he got worried, and he came back to find my grandmother, who was sitting on the bed, frozen. She had gotten dressed, she put on her shoes, she had done her hair, but she could not move. She was paralyzed. And he said, "Sugar honey, what's wrong? It's time to go and vote." And she said, "I don't want to." And he looked at her and he said, "What do you mean you don't want to? Your children, your husband, we fought for this. Your children got arrested for this. You nearly lost your job for this. We have spent our entire lives waiting for this. Why don't you want to go?" And she said, "Because I'm afraid." So what if the dogs are there? What if the police are there not to usher us in but to keep us out? She said, "I was afraid to vote." And my grandfather said, "We fought for this. It is our right." And she screwed her courage to the sticking place, and after a few minutes, she decided she would go ahead and vote. But when she looked at me to tell me the story, she said, "Stacey, do you know what I was afraid of?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "I was afraid of the power. Because what if I voted and it worked? What if I voted and things changed? What if I voted and my children had a better future? What if I voted and my time on this earth would mean something? What if I voted and things changed?" Power is scary. Power is overwhelming. Power is a terrifying truth. But in this room are the people who deserve that power. And if we use our power and lift our power and employ our power, we will get the world that we deserve. We will get the heaven on earth that we have earned if we are willing to do the work. And so when I listen to these young people, they know what power looks like. But they don't have the power yet, so you've got to use that power for them. You cannot be afraid to cast the ballot. If you don't think your vote counts, tell these children their voices do. If you don't think your vote matters, tell these children their futures do. If you don't think the future matters, tell these children you believe in them more than you believe in anything else. Because together we can rise, and together we can win. And that is the power of the vote. Thank you so much.
Let's give it up for Man Talk 9 2024. And let's give it up for Stacey Abrams, the Honorable Stacey Abrams. I think JJ Haddon said it best, that sometimes it's not you that gets the victory, but the people who come after you. And there is no Senator Ossoff without Stacey Abrams. There is no Senator Raphael Warnock without Stacey Abrams and the infrastructure that she put in place here in the state of Georgia. So we are honored and grateful to see her return here, and we want to make more opportunities for you to return whenever you decide what God has next for you. And we're grateful for what's going to take place over the next 60, 70, 80 days here in the state of Georgia. You know, she could be on MSNBC right now, CNN right now, but she took the invitation from Springfield Baptist Church to be here. And we're grateful once again for how liberal you have been with your time here at Springfield. Well, I'm glad I'm not a judge. I'm glad I'm not a judge today, but we are so grateful to have all of these young people be with us today. Here at Springfield Baptist Church, during the pandemic years, we began a ministry called ABLE. And ABLE is a ministry to families who have young people or even elderly people with special needs. And we've come to realize that when it comes to people with special needs, there's always a list of what they can't do. But we believe that there's also a special list of what they can do. And that's why we call them ABLE. And we're grateful today to have ABLE representation And we're grateful that the first speaker you heard, let's give it up for Riley and for all that he brought to this program today and the nerves that he fought through. Thank you, Riley, for getting us started. Before I announce the winners of our oratorical contest, I would like to invite Dr. Sadia Muhammad to join me here in the pulpit. She's a member of Springfield Baptist Church, a retired educator, amen. And I know all of these superintendents of schools are taking note of all the educators that you want to swipe from other counties. Dr. Sadia Muhammad represents not only Springfield, but she also represents our Toastmasters International. Thank you, Deacon Davis, for being right there when I needed you. And she helped us to prepare these young people for their speeches today. And I want to give her an opportunity to talk about each of them.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the beginning of today's event, someone said that the young people believe that you have to stand on your business. I think we can say these young people stood on their business and did an awesome job. It's been a privilege, a pleasure, and an honor to work with these young leaders. Their dedication, passion for ensuring democracy is commendable. But what's most important, all of them have a conviction for democracy. They are, as they started the process, their discussions were, we believe in voting, we believe that our vote counts, we believe in impacting society. And from that, they drew their own speeches, no AI, but from their own personal reflection. And I really believe I stayed in education for so long because I love to see the process of our young people. And watching these young leaders go through the process of an idea to written words to speech and presentation is outstanding. I'm so proud of y'all. The last note is, as it was mentioned, they communicate differently. And just this morning, Sydney said, I want you to see what I put on TikTok about voting and the impact of your individual vote. They are all just our spokesperson for the impact of the individual vote and the future of what they believe in. Congratulations to each of you. You've done an outstanding job, and thank you to the parents for supporting these young people.
Particularly thank Sister Muhammad, Dr. Muhammad, as we lost her mother earlier in the summer. And we honor her mother today, and throughout all of this process, she was dealing with the grief of her mother, and we're grateful for her just persevering to make sure that she can be a blessing to these young people. Well, we finally got to that place, and I want to just thank God we're ahead of schedule in church, ahead of schedule. Make note of that, please. And as the pilot says, I'm probably going to need this time back another chance, so please make note of that. I would like to announce the winners of the oratorical contest for 2024 for Man Talk. And I do want you to know that each of them will be given a prize, and also Riley will be given a prize. And we've got Dr. Harold Davis and Dr. Isaac who are going to be making their way back to the podium today to take pictures with each of our winners. With a score of 519, According to the International Toastmasters Speech Contest Judges Guide and Ballot, our third place winner is Janaya. Would you come forward, Janaya? Janaya has won a third place prize of $250. Janaya, 15 years old. Did she not give us a wealth of information in the time that she shared with us? That is wonderful. With a score of 536, our second place winner is Tristan. Would you come forward and receive your gift of $500? Tristan. Last but not least, with a score of 581, our first place winner and $1,000 prize scholarship winner is Sydney Hammond. Come on, Sydney. Thank you, everyone. Let's take a picture with all of our participants once again, with all of our participants. Let's give it up one more time for all of our participants. Covering the Nation, thank you so much. To the Springfield staff and to all of our multimedia. And I particularly want to thank our security team here at Springfield Baptist Church for keeping us safe. I want to make you aware, we're not streaming right now, but we are going to be replaying this on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on all of our social media platforms and at SBC Growth.
All the people are leaving. This year's night. As you can see, all the people here are registering to vote. Yes.
Is there a Henry County land office?
I'm not sure if it's a Henry County. You can contact that phone number there. Okay. And they'll be.
No, but I'm saying, is there a Henry County land office? Okay. Okay, I got you. Okay. check it out. Okay.
You know, I had to run home to get my tripod. So I missed the young people speaking, but I got this just this will be posted on Okay, okay.